Come on. Hello, everyone. Welcome here. Feels good, huh? Event team has found a beautiful villa. God is giving us the right weather, and I think we have all together decided to spend time, and it's fantastic. And I have to say, I've been really intriguing to listen to the great panels yesterday and my colleagues speaking earlier today. I think we're achieving a content quality that is really significant. And the nice thing is, it's only the beginning of the journey. Now, I'll hopefully entertain you for the next little time, and then later tonight we'll have a nice dinner, and then tomorrow we move into a more informal mode for networking, business and not, as well I hope sports and sanctum and entertainment. But I have to tell you that after I'm done speaking here, I'm going to make a significant announcement. So I would encourage you to try to stay hydrated, go a bit short on the beer and a bit longer on the water, because it will get more important as we go through this session. And anyhow, I think with that, I wanted to start with sailing. So many of you are asking me about this. Actually, I decided last night to insert this into the presentation. But you will see that it's highly connected. It's going to come together in the end here. But you can see here are pictures from the last couple of years of racing. And I think what you really see here is a very, very effective and well-oiled machine of unique professionals doing their task at very close to 100% over very long durations of time, which I think is something we all try to achieve in the businesses we build and the businesses that we invest in, something that is far from easy to reach. And of course, one of the beauties of sailing is that you get big proper trophies instead of just boring wealth in bank accounts. So it's doubly motivating from that perspective. And we've been rather successful in this endeavor so far. But it's really just the beginning. I made a commitment with my team that we will challenge for the 2027 Admirals Cup. And in order to do that, we bought the New Zealand boat, which beat us badly, to be honest, this summer. And I thought absolutely was the best platform on the water. There's only one way to solve that problem, is through acquisition. And this is the program for the next year and a half, or at least the main pillars. Any of you that are either interested in sailing or just like to hang out with hot sailors or like to be in beautiful sunny places, you're welcome to come. We're going to make events around these events for all our LPs. And so you just need to shout out to the event team, and lots of fun things will happen. But in the end, we're after that trophy. The plan is to build it step by step. So I think we have the right platform to challenge for 27. But in parallel, I'm working with the lead designer for these type of boats to build and launch secretly a new boat for the 2029 Cup. And there we go for full glory. Also, as of next year, I'm launching a women's team. We also race in smaller, more nimble boats that we can move around easily. We have now one platform in US, recently acquired, and one platform moving around here in Europe. And this really ties together to the main project, because one of the requirements of the sport these days is that we need to, on the boat, also have a women sailor. And given that every position on the boat, as you saw in the pictures, is absolutely of equal importance, we need to strive for the best. It's not a tokenism, it's real. We're also required to have one person under 26 on the boat. I'll come back to that. But both of these things are brilliant. So we'll we will really go hard on supporting women's sailing and women in our sport, which still today is way too low of a percentage, just like we have done at BullhoundCapital. So I'm very proud of that. And also want to do a shout out to bigdata.com, BullhoundCapital, and GP Bullhound for supporting us on the journey so far. And we make sure, as you can see, to make that really visible in the eyes of the billionaires coming there. And I wanted to show you how it actually is, because I think most of you think about sailing as a rather nice endeavor, with a beer in your hand and, I don't know, kind of beach wear. So maybe we can play this first video.
Ley line again is just above that, behind the lighthouse level. Here, come on, the front.
You can see the guy in the black here, he's the navigator, so he's controlling the rounding. Behind me is the tactician, so he's controlling the millisecond timing of the turn. Here's the bowman, this is like young people in a business. His job is to suffer the most and never complain. And a boat is a career ladder. Everybody starts in the front, and if you can have enough grit, you slowly get moved backwards, but 99% get moved off the platform. And because in the end, it's a finite amount of positions. This platform we sail with 9, in J70 we sail with 5, and on the New Zealand platform we sail with 11. So it's a very, very tiny amount of positions for a very important endeavor. And that's kind of daytime coordinated sailing, but I also wanted to show you how comfortable it gets in the night. These boats don't move at normal boat speeds or also not with normal comfort. So you can see here's the kite trimmer. He has to stand up at all time. The driver is now to my right, also standing up. And then outside of this picture is the whole crew sitting on the rail to put downward pressure on the windward back end of the boat so that we don't dive into the wave in the surf. And this goes on. So I think it's really, really similar to the founder's experience of building companies. You come ashore, people think you have this glorious life, they look at your fancy sail clothes, but actually, the real journey is 99% suffering, right? And it's uncanny similarities. So I just wanted to share that before I started the real presentation. And again, I would really welcome you if you have technology that you think can be used in sailing, that we could give us an advantage others don't have. We're already experimenting with use of AI in weather routing. We're seeing a lot of development there. But I'm sure you guys, if you all collectively think about this as a possible win, you will come up with more good ideas for our GARM team. Anyhow. Now, for business. So we're here building the future, actually not of technology. I think we're building the future of civilization as we will see it, and I think a very augmented version of our idea of civilization. We play a small, but I think important role in this, and so do many of you here. And we've seen kind of 3 cycles now, and I love the cyclicality of our industry. We have great innovation strides, followed by commercial expansion, followed by founders leaving and salary men and women taking over, thus stagnation. That then creates frustration, and the founders come back to fight again with new ideas. So I want to talk about first the march of compute, then I will talk about the growth of Bullhound, and lastly, and probably most interestingly, I'll talk about the future. You've seen this slide 1,000 times. We break that down. We see some very important innovations that made it popular not only for departments of defense or governments or very large endowed universities to have access to computing power, but pretty much every small and medium-sized enterprise could leverage their business, and ultimately even we humans could bring it home as consumers. And during this era of the 80s, you can see that the impact of technology was evident, but I would say it wasn't exponential. So if I would have transposed New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ onto this, you would see kind of a steady growth of economy rather than something explosive. First step of underpinning to me. Then the internet arrives. Now this is technology that catches the imagination of people. And of course also with that catches the imagination of capital. And capital are great followers, so when that imagination happens, it tends to create a very strong herd instinct. And maybe as the herd grows bigger, the detail level of analysis and due diligence starts to shrink, and you enter hype and then potentially a bubble. And clearly this was the case with the internet, as we all know. But what I think is important to remember from this era, because I think it's relevant to so many questions I get about whether AI is hype today or not, is why did the bubble burst? I think the promise that the internet provided us then has been held up by a factor of 100. It was all there, it was all real, but only in the digital realm. As soon as you went outside of that and you tried to get this digital experience to also deliver some form of service or function for an enterprise or a consumer, it failed. The underpinnings in the physical world were not evident. A good example that probably many of you remember is Webvan, that was launched under extraordinary circumstances, enormous capital for that point in time to deliver food to people home. Well, actually, the buying and checkout experience on the internet was good enough, but the cost to deliver the product to the house was absolutely off the scale. So in the end, we didn't have what it took to get it there. So we entered this long phase of very moderate innovation in the digital world, very moderate innovation in the technology world, but the physical world kind of caught up with the innovation. And kind of, for me, it was rather early in my career, being somebody that was interested in technology was the odd man out. The story in town was around private equity, buying out family businesses and levering them, or it was launching hedge funds, because you could operate these technologies just being inside a digital environment. And I think it wasn't really until Steve Jobs wrestled the power of the mobile phone software infrastructure away from the mobile operators through the launch of the App Store and through launching a phone that wasn't tethered to a particular mobile operator's SIM card, that we entered the world that I think we live in today. So that particular App Store launch, I think, is one of the most important historical events, not just of our industry, but of the world at large. With that, technology goes mainstream, and here you can see what happened to NASDAQ in that period. Extreme amounts of real economic value was being generated. Uber was early showing, Travis was showing in San Francisco that his revenue in San Francisco far outseeded the whole value of the taxi market prior to the launch of his service, because what he launched was not just a taxi service, it was a better thing, a better way of transporting. And I can give you 100 examples of that. In the very end of it, the ideas started to run out. We had kind of pushed this as far as we could go with the technology we had at that time and very recently, and that led to a bubble, because as often the capital markets are the last to see it, and the founders have to suffer the consequences. But while I think most of us, definitely all of you from an LP perspective, feel that the period since 2001 has been rather tough, we we look at Fund 5 and we see the valuations of the company stand still. We even see, for instance, in the sake of Klarna, a massive down round. We know some of our holdings in US, there's no liquidity in the secondary market and anywhere close to the valuations paid. That didn't stop scientists and engineers from going on to the next big challenge. That wasn't their problem. That's our problem, right? So we were starting to see these breakthroughs in what we now call AI, but early, I would say we talked about it more as machine learning. And they were more transformational than I think any of us could really fully have understood. And I think we now have passed this breakthrough. It is there. I'll ask a question that was asked yesterday because there were many people here that weren't here yesterday. But how many of you have some form of AI thing on your phone, like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, right? All. I mean, all. This is ultra pervasive. And again, somebody said to me that when technology is great, it's perceived like magic. You stop calling it technology, right? And I think there is that feeling that we have all experienced. Not with every question, not with every type of experiment we've done, but we have been delighted to the point that we are all now having it integrated in our lives. But I think a part of being an investor in this space is to be early to see these trend shifts. I think we have, as proven in the morning panel, several times over with the shift to mobile, shift to digital media, shift to SaaS, shift to AI, placed real serious markers on the table before it got popularized, which of course is great for returns. But as the technology matures, I think also a really big and probably underestimated part of our job, or my job, is to think about the potholes. Where is this great technology innovation going to be held up by something else? I mean, for how long have we had self-driving car capability? 7 years now. How popular is it on the roads? Very, very moderate, right? So it's a technology that has not lived up to the expectations of 7 years ago. Not, in my view, not due to the technology itself, but due to a huge underestimation by most on the deterrence outside of technology. Regulation, insurance, humans' willingness to actually drive their own car and so forth. And I can make 100 examples of that, you know. How many of you bought an NFT? How many of you still own a, what do they call, boring ape? Yeah. But you never knew what to use them for, right? You just bought them because you were excited about the news about them. And this is, I think, what we as professional investors have to desperately try to avoid. So I think one of my realizations that I want to share with you is I think there are 6 significant risks in investing in and around the AI world. The first is regulatory risk. I'm very worried about what we're going to see in the healthcare, Medicare industry. I think the people that set up the rules and regulations of that may not be fully on the ball yet. And that means even great innovation and great software companies using AI innovation may not be as rapid to sell their technology as they would have hoped. I see this at a very significant scale in the financial world. It's highly regulated, particularly at the larger institutional scale. I mean, to the point that many of our larger competitors on the banking side are not even allowing their staff to experiment with ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or big data, right? So you're creating a learning gap, a learning separation. And that can be really good if you're a founder in that space because you can then get a huge advantage. But it can be a huge risk if you're a software company wanting to sell into that market. I think the next significant risk is political risk. And actually here I don't so much refer to geopolitical risk that, I think is very prevalent in the current, general and media conversation. I'm talking more about nations starting to find the idea that they should be a key player in the AI revolution. And I'm really worried when I hear about ideas like sovereign AI, because that to me means we are going to have people who do not neither fully understand it in most cases, also don't operate in a capitalist environment where you kind of trial and error, you have one great success but 909 failures. That's not an acceptable risk outcome from a government. They cannot have any failure, right? I mean, they cannot bankrupt their country testing. Even though I think we have one country that's trying to do that with Bitcoin. but it is a rare example of a small outlier country. So I'm really worried about that. So that means areas for me to avoid. Then human resistance is a key point. There is a lot of technology that is really good. But there is also a lot of humans that don't really appreciate change. I mean, it tends to be that the older you get, the less you want things to change, and the richer you get, the less you want things to change. So you kind of enter a preserving mode. And what is challenging with the corporate world, as I see it, is that those people who probably are inclined to resist change because they're already in a good place and maybe they don't feel they have that many decades of runway left, are the people that run most of the world's companies and most of the world's governments. So I think that's a real risk. I see in many cases, even inside Bullhound, this is a grassroots movement. It's the youngest people in our organizations that are the best users of this new technology and these new tools. And the older are maybe not resisting, but not willing to lean in on such a significant basis. This then, I think, gets exacerbated by media, who really are fearful, because if you're in any form or shape in traditional journalism, I mean, you're already in a troubled place, and this is not going to make your life any easier, really, on the short term. And you get these kind of debates that are so superficial that I think they lead the capital in the wrong direction, and that leading the capital in the wrong direction may make it harder for us to raise capital to the companies that really deserve it. I'll make a banal example that has frustrated me for years. We have, how many here are parents? Hold up a hand. Okay, 70%. How many of you, the 70%, worry or talk about your children's screen time? Okay, exactly. So this upsets me. The world, the screen, has good and bad. If your children are doing homework or studying on Wikipedia, or as is incredibly good to do today, is learn math in ChatGPT, this is a good thing. Just like it's a good thing if your children go to school, play soccer, hang out with friends. It's probably a bad thing if your children or your husband goes to Pornhub in the digital world, but it's also bad if your children go to too dangerous nightclubs or your husband to strip clubs. This is not a digital physical problem. This is a good and bad behavior problem. Don't blame technology for bad behavior. We bring it, and then it's up to every human to sort themselves out. And I mean, as a species, we don't need everybody to succeed. In fact, we need a very small amount to succeed and carry the rest in best effort forward. So I really encourage you, particularly those that are investors in the room, to don't get bamboozled by the news, particularly as I am sure over the next quarters, we're going to see an increasing tone around an AI bubble, an AI hype. We're already hearing in newspapers like Wall Street Journal, the FT that is considered prominent, that the enterprise result is not as expected. I think maybe the yardstick is wrong. You know, this is a shift of the competitive landscape. It doesn't increase revenue as a whole. Then, if AI is really going to mean something to the world, it has to leave the digital world and enter the physical world. It has to be around us. It has to be in our machines, in our homes, in industrial production. It has to be something for real. That is, after all, a much more important and much bigger world. And there, even the best engineers are going to come up against the laws of physics and against cost factors. And they tend to move in a more linear engineering fashion. You know, anybody who has an engineering background will know that it's a very difference when you speak to analog engineers versus digital engineers in kind of their problem levels they are having to solve. And so I think very important for us when we go into these areas is to realize that it's hard, but not impossibly hard to build ChatGPT. But it's almost impossibly hard to build Optimus. So you have to put, you can believe in both, but you have to put two very different time perspectives on your expectation base on that. Then, we are also evolving with AI. This is not just about technology companies winning and portfolio companies doing better. So, what I see that we have actually done, because again, a lot of people ask me, what of this actually works? And I think the best evidence of what actually works is that we deployed Fund 6 in 16 months, fully deployed. I believe we probably looked at 5 times more companies than in any prior vintage. I think we did deeper research, we learned more, and we were more informed as we were doing this than we have ever been as investors in BullhoundCapital through the leverage of AI in many of these parts of our job that is not the human-to-human charming, selling, negotiation interaction. All of these other parts, or many of these other parts, are highly data-driven, very systematic, and really, really suited to AI at the level we can access it already today. Legal and operations, research is my favorite, diligence, post-investment, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's quite staggering to see. So, that comes, I think, my main thesis of what we are living through here is I think this will put an incredible pressure on all corporate organizations in the world to identify what is the new organizational shape that we need to create to be efficient in this new world, this new environment. Just like when we moved from farming and feudal society where you tended to have one owner, boss person, and then a very flat organization of farmers, warriors, what so. We moved to this pyramid structure in the idea of a kind of a Darwinian testing of people to see who should ultimately run the whole business and allow it to perpetuate, not by generational inheritance carryover, but by merit. And we all know there's 10,000 business books written by why it's better to focus on merit than bloodline. I think in 20, 30 years' time, there's going to be as many books written about how big this shift was. Because so many of the processes, so many even of the ideas of what we need to do to be a business, to deliver what really matters is delight if it's a consumer, value if it's an enterprise, is going to be turned upside down. So, what I see, and I can here only talk about my business, academians will probably research this on a much more broader and statistically supported basis, is that AI has come from the bottom left and right corners. So it has run across all functions from day one. Didn't matter if it was in operations, reporting, finance, due diligence, research. So it's really, really horizontal. But it starts with taking away the absolute most boring and repetitive work. And then it kind of grows upwards and inwards. And 2 years ago, with half the assets under management, BullhoundCapital was about 45 people. And I would argue everybody was needed on the boat. Because when we were going to write an investment memorandum, when we were going to do quarterly updating in a professional way of 40 or so holdings, we're going to keep you investors happy with how we explain it. We needed a lot of financially trained technocrats to crunch that for us and write it in a business school way. We don't need that anymore. We don't have those people in our organization anymore. They have left to pursue other careers. Instead, what we are left with is a bow. If you think the boat is now turned upside down, so the bow is pointing down, we have a really dangerous but exciting place for young people to give it a try. And we pick people here not because of financial training, we pick them because we think they have star quality. We think they have the EQ to sit down with founders, to sit down with pension funds in due time. So it becomes instead a testing ground. And I think the modern organization is no longer going to be able to keep the idea of offering a career path inside a singular company. We need to start thinking about the idea of offering a career path inside an ecosystem. So, as you heard earlier today, I arranged earlier for Lina, who has done a brilliant job on the bow, to go out to one of our most important and significant holdings, Ravenpack, and step in as an interim CFO to bring all of that financial engineering competence to a business full of engineering competence. It's a total win-win. And I hope, if things go well, and Lina, where are you? If Lina doesn't fall too much in love with Ravenpack, that she will come back in the boat, but then she will be at the mast, right? So it's a step up in the road. And I think collecting us all here in years to come and in years in the past, we are building this ecosystem where many of you have come to us and we have arranged many things for your children, from going to the Future Stars program, being interns, sitting in receptions, whatnot, right? So you've been putting your children on our bow, which is brilliant, and then they have gone on to have great careers. But we're going to lean on you and ask you to take our bow men and bow women going forward so that they can also come back to the investment business having worked in real engineering and product technology companies. So, this to many would look like a diamond and a rhomboid, but to me it looks like a boat. And it looks like a particular boat. It looks like the Viking longboat. And BullhoundCapital, to me, is a modern Viking voyage. Everybody on board is strong, is tough, everyone is resilient. We are jumping on the boat, and these boats were spectacular boats. Compared to the race boats, much better boats. These boats you could drag over land. These boats you could row when there was no wind. You were always moving forward, always creating value, always compounding. And the main objective, not as in American Netflix, was not fighting, it was trade. But trade in a way that more colonial countries, let's see how many here are from a colonial country. In that I would include England, France, Spain, Portugal. Hold up a hand. Right? So your forefathers' ambition, or a few of them, were to go somewhere to conquer it. Right? For that you need a big army, because the hard thing is not to fight the battle, it's to keep the ground once you've won the battle. It's a logistics nightmare. Right? The Vikings had no interest in that. We move with times. You know, when the trading is good in Scotland, we're in Scotland. When the trading is good in Constantinople, we're in Constantinople. But at all times, we have the boat in ship shape and ready to go to the next place. And I think this is the example of the modern investment firm. And you can see this map is where the Vikings went, but it's also very similar to somebody else's travels. Lastly, before we look at the future a bit, I want to say that today, at least out of my mouth, it is the last time you will hear me say AI. Good. Okay? AI is no longer a buzzword, it's backbone. You think I'm joking, but think about this seriously. People don't call themselves internet investors anymore, right? They don't call themselves mobile investors. You do that when something is hard to understand. So you take a whole slew of technologies and you bring like a buzzword around it to simplify, to make it possible to be on that Viking boat, on that journey. But then once it's there, once it's a real industry, it just, in the mind of people who are not in technology, it disappears. It becomes irrelevant, right? It's just part of life. People don't talk about Spotify as a great app anymore, right? People talk about Spotify as a music experience. People don't talk about Netflix as a great web service. They talk about Netflix as a noun. It's Netflix. I mean, people don't even talk about Google as a search engine outside of technology people. They Google it, right? They've stopped caring about what the engineers did and just subsumed it into their lives. And I am today on the last day of the prior stage of that in my life. So from here on, the idea of Fund 7 is now, within this backbone, to figure out where there are missing puzzle pieces, where there are business opportunities, where there are inefficiencies that we can fill. So, how many believe I am not going to make the mistake of saying AI next year? So, if I make the mistake, and please remember this, I would appreciate next year that every time the word gets mentioned by me, you will stand up and boo. I may need a whip here. So, what does the future hold for us? And when I was thinking about this, I realized that there are people here that have brilliance at the level which is just absolutely incomparable. So it will be facetious of me to talk about it. So actually, I've asked Mike to come up and tell us why quantum advantage is so important. Please come up. You go.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Great. When Per asked me to do this about an hour ago, I reflected on what I could say to an audience like this that could actually bring you value. And you hear a ton about buzzwords in quantum. I guarantee you've read news reports about investment rounds in public companies and at the market share offerings. Instead, I want to try and take a few minutes to give some actual insight about what this field is. So you come away with a deeper understanding that helps you actually make investments and continue to support organizations like Bullhound. Now, I had an experience a couple of years ago where I was talking to a parliamentarian in Australia who was actually quite bullish on the quantum technology sector. And what he said to me in trying to shape policy around quantum technology was that when I talk to my colleagues, they do not understand the difference between quantum computing and monkey NFTs. To these people who make policy, and to many people who make investments, these things are indistinguishable. They're just the new thing that you hear about in the news. And I am committed to ensuring none of you fall into that trap. I want to tell you, by giving a little bit of a story, what quantum technology is, why it's relevant, and then in particular, what this idea of quantum advantage is going to bring. Now, the surprising thing to start with is a key idea that basically everything we use today already works because of quantum physics. Every one of us has in our pocket a device powered by quantum physics. We don't think about that all that much, but it comes from the semiconductor industry. Semiconductors, the material that we use to build microprocessors, semiconductors are materials that either allow electricity to flow or block the flow of electricity like an insulator, depending on the application of another electrical signal. Controlling the flow of electricity with electricity is a capability that comes to us from quantum physics. Semiconductor physics is a manifestation of quantum physics. And as everybody knows, we've done these incredible things. All of the technology businesses that have been talked about in the last day and a half, all of the technology we always use, all of this is powered by the semiconductor industry. But by analogy, the way we build technology right now, the most advanced, amazing things where you put literally 1 billion fundamental electronic switches called transistors in an area the size of your thumbnail, all of this, by analogy, is built in a way that's similar to making sandcastles. We start with a giant pile of stuff, and then if we learn the right rules, we can shape the stuff into the right shapes. And you've seen people do magnificent things. You build sand sculptures of giant castles and sailboats and these incredible things. But it shouldn't escape your understanding that if instead of looking at the giant pile of stuff and thinking what you could do with it, if instead you looked at the individual grains of sand, you would see that there is new complexity that you couldn't otherwise observe. And the same is true in the way we build technology. What we're doing right now in the emerging quantum technology sector is looking at the individual grains of sand. We are talking about building technologies from the bottom up with single particles of matter called atoms and single particles of light called photons. That is where we start. And when we do this, we unlock new rules, new complexity that allows us to think very seriously about building completely new technologies. Now, the two that you would have heard about from the comments on the panels earlier and in the news are quantum computing and quantum sensing. Now, quantum computing, which is the subject of this slide, broadly, is the idea that if you access these new rules of physics that come when we can control and manipulate very small things, that we can process information to solve problems we couldn't otherwise solve. Now, the problems that are targeted are extremely high economic value. This is why McKinsey calls this a $2 trillion opportunity by 2035. Problems in the way we design transport networks, problems in the way we design logistics optimization, manufacturing, problems in code breaking and cybersecurity. But another one that I'll talk more about, the intersection of quantum and AI. Now, the unfortunate thing is that quantum systems, things that obey the rules of quantum physics, are very fragile. They tend to break all the time. That leads in quantum computing to errors. The machines just fail, things go wrong. This is why we don't have widely deployed quantum computers right now. There's a huge amount of investment into trying to figure out how to make them more stable. And this is actually the problem that Q-CTRL, the company that I founded, has focused on. How do we make quantum things more stable, more useful? Now, by background, I was an academic. I worked for the 2012 Nobel laureate in quantum physics, Dave Wineland. Worked in the US DoD. I ran my own academic team. And I became one of like a dozen people in the world who specialized in a discipline called quantum control. How do I make things that obey the rules of quantum physics perform useful work? And the key insight that developed and eventually became the foundation of Q-CTRL was that intelligent machines are better at accessing the quantum domain than we are as humans. Almost all the experiments that have been built to show that we could build quantum computers have literally hand-tuned devices. People are tuning knobs, analog knobs, in order to make these things work. And we saw that this was not viable. And we began building new forms of AI and machine learning that allowed us to better access and manipulate the quantum domain. And when we did that, we simply found we could do better, not by a little bit, but by orders of magnitude. Now, what eventually happened is we built that as infrastructure software that now lives natively in the biggest quantum platforms in the world. We went live as the first independent software vendor to ever be integrated in a quantum platform in December 2023 with IBM, who has 90% market share for the use of quantum computers. It's since rolled out to other large companies in the public markets like IonQ and Rigetti. We have a huge backlog of other deployments that we've already commenced or are coming down the pipe soon. But the reality, and this idea of quantum advantage, is that the machines are not yet good enough to outperform the best alternative. They're too small. And that's not something that I alone can fix with our software. I rely on the contributions from the hardware vendors, the IBMs, the IonQs, and the like. And that poses timing risk. And there is almost nothing, you can correct me, almost nothing that investors hate more than timing risk. There's huge uncertainty about when quantum advantage will come. We know that when it hits, it will absolutely change everything. But recognizing that there is uncertainty, we began a journey in the company to understand how we could capture value in the nearer term. And the opportunity we identified was in another application of quantum called quantum sensing, using quantum things to detect the world around them. And the particular technologies that we built and then augment with software are devices that measure tiny little variations in Earth's geophysical features, tiny variations in the magnetic field. We think about Earth's magnetic field as the thing that points north. But it has all these little bumps and wiggles that depend on what's underground.
Can I have a speaker? How many at all think about which direction the magnetic field points? Hold up a hand.
If you ever look at your phone and you see the little blue cone in Google Maps, it's telling you which way north is. Right? It's a compass, but there's more. And there's more that we haven't used before. What we built is a new technology that's able to see these tiny variations in Earth's field, solving a critical problem. And the critical problem is, how do you navigate when there is no GPS? Now, this is something that, aside from perhaps one of the earlier discussions today, most of you probably don't think about. But let me ask, how many of you flew here on an airplane? Of you, how many of you flew from, say, Eastern Europe, Asia, Middle East? I have really bad news for you. And the bad news is that since about March 2024, there have been roughly 1,000 deliberate GPS jamming attacks on commercial aircraft per day, every single day. And the areas where this is most pronounced are the Black Sea, northern Iraq, northern Iran, the Middle East, the Baltic states, Poland. There's a new electromagnetic iron curtain that's descending over the east, and it is dramatically impacting aviation and military operations. We built a new quantum navigation system that fixes that problem. It does not rely on GPS. It cannot be blocked. It can't be faked. It's called spoofing. And I'm very happy to tell you as an early announcement that next week, on October 9th, Time Magazine will publish this as one of the top innovations for 2025. And even better, thank you, even better, if you're an investor in Fund 6, everything I'm telling you happened after the GP Bullhound investment. So this is all upside for you. It's a really exciting time there, but we don't lose track, just to finish, on the opportunity for quantum computing long term. It is a land grab opportunity. That's why we're integrating with all of these major platforms now. We see the opportunity to transition from this very heavy defense and aerospace focus in our early applications, where the market is so clearly defined, towards broader commercial deployment of quantum computers as we hit quantum advantage, when the quantum computers are better. But the application I'm most interested in is quantum AI. Now, we as a company build AI for quantum. We use AI tools to make quantum hardware better. We bring together a $2 trillion opportunity and a $6 trillion opportunity. But what's really interesting is that this is the only application of AI with feedback dynamics. AI helps us build better quantum computers. Better quantum computers feed into next generation AI systems. This is a hope, this is a vision, there's a lot of work to do. But the question I will end with is this. If we're using AI to build next generation quantum computers, which eventually go into next generation AI, is AI, are machines currently designing their future selves? That's the question, and I'm very happy to get to chat with you today. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Mike. That was both riveting and a daunting lecture at the same time. You now understand why I told you to drink water, not beer early, right? It's but I think this is such a good showcase of that we are in the beginning of a very large shift. And if you remember, or maybe some of you have forgot about the 90s, is where the sustainable businesses were built, where the failures did not happen, was in the backbone, was in the mobile networks, was in the fiber optics, was in the base layer of software to run these systems. So while the early ideas on app level blew up, the base layer moved us into what then could happen in 2008. I think we're in that phase again. This is the era of the great engineers that are going to start by solving the hard problems, probably for a couple of years or maybe even a decade to come, before these truly amazing things will happen with AI, where it's deviceless and always there and so forth. And to continue on that hard or deep theme, I would like to invite my next great speaker, Tony. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. My name is Tony Frazier. I'm the CEO of LeoLabs, and we're focused on bringing innovation to the space industry. I think one of the things that's really exciting about space is that we've seen a massive investment in commercialization of space over the last decade. In the last 10 years, there's been over $300 billion of private investment that's gone into space. That's made launch more accessible to more people. That's enabled new types of missions. And so we leverage space now for communications, for position navigation and timing. We leverage it for remote sensing, and it really drives our way of life. And so one of the things that we've been focused on at LeoLabs is how do we keep space safe and secure, and do it in a way that allows a more diverse set of operators to be able to understand where their high-value assets are, predict where they're going to be, and also identify when there's risk to them in their missions. And so one of the things that has driven this is that we've seen an incredible growth of assets in space over the last decade. Just over the last 5 years, the number of active payloads, so satellites that are flying, have grown from about 2,000 to over 10,000 today, and is projected to grow another order of magnitude to over 50,000 within the next 5 to 10 years. And so what we've done at LeoLabs is we've created a global sensing network that's able to maintain custody of all 25,000 objects flying in low Earth orbit, which then allows us to be able to understand where things are, predict where they'll be, and also identify when there's risk to those classes of missions. And so one of the reasons I'm really excited about what this means for the growing space economy is that we have an opportunity to really disrupt kind of how this mission has been addressed in the past. If you look at the way this has been done historically, it's all been driven by government investment. About $5 billion a year is spent across the US government, international governments to build out these sensor networks, and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars in building systems. to collect data that they then make available, to their users, we've taken a commercial approach. We started as a spin-out of Stanford Research Institute, had built our first radar on government funding through a grant, but then raised $140 million of private capital, of which Bullhound came in to support us via our Series B to commercialize that approach. And so we now have 11 active radars across 7 sites around the world. We're building our next generation technology to be able to further support that mission. And what we've seen is just an incredible acceleration of the types of missions that we can support, both for safety and security. That's led to us being able to grow our business significantly over the last few years. In 2023, we did about $14 million in revenue. This year, we'll do over $50 million in revenue, and we achieved profitability for the first time this quarter, and should be profitable for the full year. So I think one of the things I just want to leave you with is the importance of having a strong partner in terms of the investors that are supporting us in our journey. This type of technology is hard. The technology has been incubated for many years. There's a massive, it has high barriers to entry. Selling to governments is hard, and it takes patient investors to understand the unique aspects of what we do in order to be able to see the potential and to support us in that journey. And I just want to really thank Per, you and the team, for supporting us in that.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. It's fantastic to hear this story. And it already is a very significant business, but I know the plans we have, it will make it look like nothing in 10 years' time. And there's actually an anecdote to this investment because we came about it in an unusual way. So again, this goes back to sailing because, about 70% of the surface area of Earth is water, and these days it's highly polluted, and you become very, very aware of this when you are using this water for sport, and it's kind of a disaster about to happen. So I was thinking about this from an environmental technology perspective, and then thinking, what is an even bigger surface area? And then when we think about the space around us, it's infinitely many more layers of even larger surface area. So my feeling was like we're just starting to destroy that part as well. And I really don't want that to see. So we started to look at it from a perspective, which are the companies that in some way can positively impact that. And as Callum and Irina and many smarter people than me were digging into this hard problem, we then realized that the use case was much, much bigger than that it had a really important governmental angle, defense angle, commercial angle, that this is critical when you decide how to launch rockets and so forth, all very CapEx heavy projects. But it actually came out of sailing and out of environment. So hopefully, as any great business, we can solve more than one problem at the go. And that brings me to the third and last speaker for this session. Roman, welcome up. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Is this working? Yeah? Okay, excellent. So first of all, thanks a lot for everybody to be here. For some of you, maybe this is the second time you see me. I'm Roman Orus. I'm one of the founders of Multiverse Computing and also the Chief Scientific Officer. And I have to say that you are extremely lucky this afternoon because you are getting 2 quantum physicists in one afternoon. Okay. So right after Mike really did a very good job in setting the background, talking about quantum physics and so on. So that's fantastic. So I don't have to repeat that for you because I'm also a quantum physicist. Okay. My background, I also come from academia. I'm also, I studied quantum physics. I did all my PhD and everything on that. And then we started Multiverse. And I want to tell you, I'm going to end up talking about AI, but I want to tell you about the trajectory that we actually had at Multiverse and how we ended up doing some of the best AI tools that are now worldwide, okay? So, we are now doing language models that are extremely efficient. much more efficient than what the guys from OpenAI, than what the guys from Meta and so on are doing. And I want to tell you a little bit of how we actually did it, because it's one of those examples of creative destruction, one of those innovative disruptions that nobody expects, okay? And that happens when you just start crossing different fields and you realize that there are new ideas coming out, okay? So Mike was telling before that they do AI for quantum, which is great. We actually do the other way around. We do quantum for AI. Now the topic is that when we started Multiverse, we are a pretty young company. We started in 2019. In 2019, we were 4 people, all right? 2 of those 4 people are actually in this meeting. Enrique is also hanging around. Today, we are more than 200 people, and we are going to be growing even more this year. We expect to grow up to 300. The point is that we started doing software for quantum computers, okay? For using quantum computers for industrial applications. We were very good at that. Quantum computers, they are limited. They have errors and so on, as Mike was saying, and therefore we specialize very well in understanding what types of applications we could use for this type of early quantum processors. No? But we also realized something else. We realized that the techniques that we were using to simulate quantum computers, all right, which is a particular class of mathematical techniques that are highly advanced and so on, it turns out that if you apply them to machine learning and to AI systems, you could improve them a lot. You could improve them a lot. So when we realized this, we tested this on some first AI models. It was working very well. And then the best thing that could ever happen is that in 2022, ChatGPT came out, and that was the perfect use case. We had a large language model, and we realized that large language models are a complete disaster. They are a complete disaster. I mean, they look very good, these AI models that you all guys have. I mean, you may be very proud that you are using it, they help you in your meetings and so on. But they're a disaster. I mean, these are algorithms from the 60s, okay, or even early from the 50s that we are using with hardware from today, okay? This is very old ideas, all right? This is extremely inefficient. And, when you just want to train one of these large language models, the energy consumption is huge. I mean, I think I mentioned this yesterday. To train ChatGPT-4, not the one that we have now, but 2 versions before, I think the cost in the electricity bill of OpenAI was more than $100 million, okay? So you realize that if you need a nuclear power plant next to your AI model just to train it to talk, and the model is still not talking well, this is an energy disaster. I mean, if we continue at this growth, okay, AI is consuming energy at a rate that is completely unsustainable. We cannot continue like that, okay? We are building an AI that is just, consuming all the energy that we have, that we are able to create as humans, and that's clearly unsustainable. We can just not continue creating and developing models of AI in the way that we are doing. There is something very much fundamentally wrong in the way that we are doing AI. And as a physicist, okay, and this is also the second physicist that you have today, okay, this is very clear. I mean, look, I also said that yesterday, look at nature, okay? If you look at biological intelligence, there is a lot of biological intelligence here in this audience, and we don't need a nuclear power plant to learn how to talk, all right? So clearly nature is much more efficient. It means that there are more efficient ways of building intelligent systems, both at the hardware level and also at the software level. So what did we do? We applied the techniques that we were using to simulate quantum computers to improve the energy performance of AI models, and in particular of large language models. What we realized is that we could pick up these large language models and compress them by more than 90% in some cases, while not losing the accuracy. By more than 90%. This means that when Mark Zuckerberg comes out very proud with the glasses, and with a new model, all right? We can go there and tell Mark, hey, Mark, your model is crap, okay? And we can actually compress it 90%, okay? And we still have the same accuracy, it's much lighter, much faster, the same accuracy, and so on. And, it just works, okay? It just works. The way we do it is by realizing that there are some very deep inefficiencies in the model that we can fix by the techniques, using the techniques that we were using to simulate quantum, all right? Now, obviously, once we have this compressor and these compressed models, this is what we are doing nowadays at Multiverse. We have the compressor of AI models. We have like a zip or a RAR of AI systems, okay? We can pick up your models, we can compress them so that you have the same accuracy. They are just a tiny fraction of the memory that you had at the beginning, and this is opening a new and entire market of opportunities, because once the model is small, you can deploy it directly on devices, all right? You don't need a connection to the cloud. So you can put it on your iPhone, you can put it on your Apple Watch, you can put it on your refrigerator, on your toaster, or in your car, or on a drone, all right, without the cloud. This is completely autonomous. it can run directly on the edge, and you don't need a connection to the internet to actually make it work. So this is opening an entire new market, all right? This is what the future is gonna be. We are gonna have AI embedded everywhere. And therefore, it's very nice to talk about large language models. It's very nice to have all these models that OpenAI is building, super large with all the knowledge of the universe. But on the other side, we are also going to have super ultra small, highly efficient models embedded in absolutely every device that you have. And this is going to happen very fast, very fast. This is one of those technological revolutions that is not an option, okay? The question is not whether AI and quantum, no, but AI in particular, the question is not whether this is going to be important for you or not. This is going to happen, guys. This is going to happen. You already saw that the world has changed a lot already since 2022, in just 3 years, no? It's going to change even faster in the next year, okay? In the next years, that's my feeling. And the real question is whether you want to be part of it or not, because it's going to happen, all right? So if you want to be part of it, you really need to take action today, all right?
By investing in concept.
Exactly. That's exactly. That's where I wanted to go. Okay. You really need to move very fast because the quantum, in deep tech, all these innovations happen very quickly. Okay. In quantum, it happened very quickly. In AI, it's happening exponentially faster as compared to quantum. So it's just happening much, much faster. Okay. So if you want to be part of this revolution, you need to invest now in Fund 7, okay? Because look, how many of you who have invested in OpenAI? Now that you know quite some people, okay? Why didn't you do it? Well, you didn't have the information at that time. How large was the window of opportunity to invest in OpenAI before it skyrocketed and you could invest? It's just super short. All right? So maybe now is the last opportunity that you have as a family office to invest in the next European OpenAI, which is us, okay, through Fund 7. So excellent. Great. So let me just conclude by saying that, it's fantastic. Also, we are super happy with the support from BullhoundCapital, okay? And I'm just going to be hanging around here. So if you have more questions about AI, about quantum AI, and so on. By the way, we also know how to put these language models on quantum computers. And this is going to be the great next revolution. But maybe this is a topic, this is one of those moonshots that maybe we are going to be talking about in the next panel, okay? Thank you.
Roman, thank you so much. Fantastic. No, and listening to Roman reminds me of 20 or so years ago, I was at one of the Ericsson labs in Kista outside of Stockholm. And I think the then CEO, who came from kind of a selling locks background, said everybody's going to have internet on their mobile phone. And this group of engineers, they were all looking pretty sweaty about that. So they had to start to solve the problem of filters for band stations, for kind of bandwidth in the antennas, right? And these filters are a huge, huge business today, and people don't think about it. But I think you're sitting here now listening to the people that are putting these puzzle pieces in place that makes it possible for the CEOs out there to say this is going to happen, right? But it's not going to happen without these companies. That's for real. And then I'm going to try to make an analogy, but it depends on familiarity. So how many of you know the Belgian cartoon called Asterix and Obelix, I think in most countries? Yeah, it's really good. Great, most. So then I can do it. So the way I think about it, the job of an investor is, you remember there was like the clan chief, and then there were these two guys that were carrying his shield, right? And we're the guys carrying the shield. So we put these founders on the shield, and we try to push it up and help them, but they're the chiefs. And when you feel the intellectual weight of these three founders and many others in this room, I can tell you the shield is heavy, it's heavy. So I got a great team to help me carry this shield. But I think better than that, I think we have this much wider group to help carry this shield. What I mean by that is, how do you give sensible advice to this great level of intelligence working in very difficult areas that we can only understand on a superficial or medium deep level? Well, it's by the rule of many. It's all of us have had some similar experience, have been at some part of such a growth trajectory, had a difficult investor or board member, or had maybe some other challenge. Could be a manufacturing challenge, could be entering Asia challenge, could be entering America challenge. Please, over the rest of today and tomorrow, please share these experiences with your founders, because the vast majority of this group is either current or prior founders. And there is a lot of repeat, maybe not in the science itself, but in all the other areas of running business. So please help me carry the shield. We have 3 other areas. I'll touch on them much briefly. Health and longevity. So this is for Will to speak about at Whoop. He couldn't come, but as a gift and as a token of appreciation, he sent you all the new Whoop 5 MD with a 3 months free subscription. So I call on you all to try this out and see if you like it. Silicon. We are in the process of closing the largest ever financing round we've led in D-Matrix. And since we're in the middle of the closing process, we couldn't bring the team here to speak about that. But I think that's really exciting for us going forward. And finally, industrial automation. We haven't yet deployed capital into this area, but it's an area we are studying with great intensity. I am much more interested in robotics that don't look like humans than robots that look like humans. And I think we're going to see much, much bigger market for that. I don't think yet we're at the stage where it's that exciting to replace ourselves with something, but I think we're definitely at a stage where we would all love to replace the tedium of day-to-day life in the machine world. Now, I have to share with you that this whole presentation is made by Alex. Where's Alex? Where? Stand up. Okay, look at Alex over there. Okay. So Alex is a highly gifted young kid, and despite having studied at Wharton, it means you can find engineering talent in the most unlikely places. He has been our intern to experiment around prompt coding, and actually none of this is slideware. So I think you can see this is done in GenSpark. And I think our major learning is it's still a lot harder to prompt code this, right? Because the challenge we have is mine and your expectation of how it should look. That still hasn't fully transitioned, right? We want it to look like PowerPoint, even though we kind of all hate PowerPoint. So when he started, look, this is moving around, it's super cool. I'm like, yeah, but the guys are not going to get it. You're like, can you just make a graph? So I wanted to show this as a case. We really try to eat our own dog food. I think it's very, very important. We try and use every product we invest in. We test it, we play with it, we make mistakes. And I think this is a critical part of, staying kind of intellectually dynamic enough for this job. But anyhow, it was all made in AI. And we made something more with AI. In fact, I've AI'd the investment team. So can we run the video with music?